So, since we're going to be looking at a session that kind of repeats a lot of the stuff I've done before, in this case we're creating a new player status screen, I figured I'd try something a little different and record the audio while watching the video at 2x speed. And then I'm going to stitch the audio and the video back together and, just kind of talk through a little bit. But, it's like I said, I'm kind of coming to this point now where I'm doing a lot of redundant work. Like in this case, I'm building yet another screen, which is what I've been doing in the last, couple sessions I did. So I'm just not sure exactly how to approach that. Like, do I keep doing the normal record my entire session and just talk out what I'm doing while I'm doing it, even though it's kind of redundant? Or should I just skip recording those types of sessions? Or should I do something similar to what I'm doing now? So I figure we'll just try it out and see how it feels. So, kind of already missed the point there, but you just saw me, well, there we go. I'm pulling up my OneNote again and kind of looking at my mock layout of what we're going to be building. So this will be the player status screen, and this will show primarily just a read-only snapshot of what the player has set up currently. So this will have the health, SP, and stamina, as well as the equipped skills in a complete overlook of those, what they have equipped, what the player's current output stats are, such as their damage and their accuracy and things like that. And I was kind of tooling around with the idea of having another list of all the stats that are affected by the player's equipment and the player's passive skills. But I did not do that in this part. I might come back and add that in later, but it's kind of a redundant thing anyways, because the methodology I would have used is the exact same as the stats for the player's damage and armor rating and things of that nature. So as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of setting out the hierarchy in the scene for the screen I'm going to add. And I pulled in one of my prefabs from earlier, which is the same prefab in the bottom left of the gameplay HUD, where it has the health, the SP, and the stamina. And I'm kind of just, using that prefab as a starting point and then reworking some of the positions. And I'm going to be adding a extra label in a second here. Yeah, Unity and its anchor system can always be, it's incredibly useful, and WinForms, Microsoft's .NET platform for building Windows applications before WPF came out, was very much done in a similar style, where controls have an anchor and the position is always relative to that anchor point, which is typically any of the corners or the center of the screen. And things will move and resize in accordance with the change of the screen's, the parent's position and sizing. And if you're not aware of where a control is anchored to, you can end up with some very weird effects when you go to resize a window or move a parent control around. So, just kind of resizing this and, fiddling around. Now, I decided to do a read-only screen today because I've been kind of struggling with getting focus to work correctly. And when I say getting focus to work, I mean in the sense that using a gamepad, you need to be able to navigate through all the screens and all the controls and everything. And it should be done in a reliable manner. So, so you can kind of know that when you press right on the stick, which control you're going to go to. And like I said, I've been having issues with that to some extent, mainly in regards to screens that need to be able to scroll. It's not exactly built in, at least what I think is an intuitive way in Unity. So I'm kind of just trying to avoid, I know inventory screen and equipping items are going to be next, but those are going to kind of rely on more of this scrolling stuff. So I would like to kind of spend some time experimenting and figure out a more holistic way of solving the problem, rather than kind of tracking which focused element is in which screen, and so on and so forth. I should be able to just drop a component on there that says, yeah, this screen deals with navigation, and give it what the initially focused item should be, and it should track what the currently focused item is, and things like that. I don't want to mix that in with the logic of my of my actual skill screens or my equipment screens or what have you. Especially then I can I can reuse that later more easily in a future project, and if it's good, even just throw it up on the asset store or GitHub or something, and hopefully, much like these videos, I always hope other people can take advantage of the work I do. So kind of just here I'm just positioning things, fiddling around. I think at this point I noticed the bars looked really dumb being off center from that text, so now I'm making sure the sliders are filling the entire space of the parent. Usually I would want to give controls a bit of a margin from the sides of their parent containers, but in this case, without any kind of distinct border, it's fine. Like maybe I'll come back and be adding a background image or something that has a border to each of these panels, or in some way or form, and it'll just look silly, and I'll have to reapply the margin. But until that time, it's not something really to worry about. These are all very much like all the other screens I've been doing in my most recent parts. These are all, very much prototypes, functional prototypes, just getting all the functionality in there before I worry about the actual UI style. Because quite frankly, before I can worry about a UI style, I need to decide on an actual theme for my game, which has always been kind of a hard part for me, because I very much enjoy building the game systems, but when it comes to actual level building and being creative, I guess creativity is kind of the part that comes hardest to me, which is kind of sad as a game developer. So you can see here I'm trying to figure out why the controls aren't snapping to the right side like they normally do. And in a second, I'm going to realize that I accidentally parented these two face button displays to my container that was originally just holding all three of the health, the stamina, and the SP bar. So I'm looking for a second there. I'm like, okay, well, wait a second. What's did I screw something up with the prefab, or what did I goof? And then I think in a second here I realized that I really slapped myself on the forehead. I just had it anchored incorrectly. Yeah, I also pulled the prefab off of the other screen because I wanted these trigger indicators. Yeah, and I also need the indicator for how much experience the player has, which, once again, as you'll know if you've watched any of the previous parts, experience is primarily just a currency for buying skills. And there we go. So I figured out the anchoring was way off, and that was the deal. So now I'm re-snapping things to their appropriate edges. Yeah, so I'm debating here for a second whether I want to start playing around with adding any kind of scrollable list, or if I even need that. And then I think better of it. Like I said before, until I kind of figure out a more holistic approach for dealing with scrolling content, I don't want to slap together too many things that are that I'm just gonna have to rewrite later. So I've been doing these video recordings for, I've got a month's worth of videos scheduled to go out on YouTube, but it's really the, the result of about a week, maybe a week and a half's worth of actual work that I'm, just splitting up. And it's been kind of interesting because I've found that while I'm recording and narrating, like I'm much more singularly focused on what I'm doing than I was before. Like I don't work at a traditional job right now. The company I was working for got purchased by another company, and as part of the purchase, we all got severance packages and job opportunities to come to the new company. But I chose to take the opportunity to take some time off and really pursue my game development stuff. I've alluded to the fact that I've done a couple of mobile apps over in the past, which is really just I released two what I would consider actual major ones in the last 4 or 5 months of the year or so. Well, no, I released one in was that June? Yeah, and then I released a second one, and that one took me about 3 months to do. It was a first-person RPG on Android and iOS. Grid-based system, not a free roaming like this one, or turn-based, menu-derived combat system. And the other one was a augmented reality app using the accelerometer in the phone to let the user hold up the phone and turn to aim. It was kind of a precursor towards getting into virtual reality applications. But I'd seen some limited success with those, and I decided that this was something I really wanted to try and take some time off and, really focus on. And now I don't remember why I got started on that topic of conversation. But in the meantime, we can see that I'm putting together out my, I have my equipment list in the bottom left now, and I've got my list of stats here, and I'm, just setting up the layout and making sure things are good with fake data. And here I copy over my equipment list because I'm thinking about doing the list of the stats that are affected by all my equipment and what that actual gain is. But I think in a moment here I just get rid of it. But yeah, so as I was saying, I decided to take some time off of working, and I do this pretty much 7 days a week. But for the time I've been doing the video recordings, like I've noticed I'm much more focused, and I think in doing the video recordings I've accidentally started using something that's called the Pomodoro technique, which is a time management tool. The essential idea is you set aside a block of time. I think traditionally it's 25 minutes, where you are completely distraction free. You don't answer the phone, you don't look at your email, you don't do anything other than the work you've set out to do. And then once that's done, you can take your 5, 10, 15 minutes between Pomodoro sessions, and you do all those things. You get your coffee or water or go for a quick walk or whatever. But then you sit down for another solid block of time in order to get your work done. And then you kind of start planning your workout in terms of how many Pomodoros will it take to complete. So with doing the recording, I've kind of accidentally taken on an aspect of that, which is the focus part. Like I still look at Twitter and look at my email and whatnot while I'm doing my work normally throughout the day, but never while I'm recording. So it's had kind of this unintended it's had two unintended consequences, and one is that my time is much more focused. Two is that now that I have an actual number on how many hours a day I'm spending actually typing, and I don't say working because a lot of the work I do in video game development and in software development in general isn't just typing at the computer, but the actual amount of time I'm spending at the computer working on the project directly is a lot lower for the number of hours in relation to the number of hours I spend at the computer in general. So it was a bit eye-opening, when I sat down on my first day's session, and I sat down for like 8 or 9 hours, and I had 5 hours worth of recording to show for it. It was a little eye-opening. But I also think that now that I've kind of moved to this system, I'm seeing a lot more tangible gains from it. Like, I'm making a lot more concise, like, feature-specific leaps in progress. So that's good. I have a bad tendency of getting, a little lost in my own head when I'm working. I'm kind of meandering around and, experiment with this, experiment with that, but then I don't actually just, accomplish the goal. I have accomplished quite a lot, but, I'm still working in the same test area, and I still had the same test enemy that I was using for a long time, and, I didn't really have any screens or anything like this, and as you've probably seen in previous parts with my penchant for using methods that load up test data and configuration, I've got a lot of stuff that's kind of stubbed out and faked, which now I'm getting to a point where, you can configure it in-game, so naturally the next step is to persist that information in saving and loading the game and, kind of treating it as a real end-to-end level to play. But I think the thing I really need to focus on is the actual plot of the game. Like, what is it going to be about? And I keep jumping around on that. I'm kind of sick of the. I don't really like high fantasy, like elves and gnomes and whatever. But I do like medieval, and I think that kind of derives from that I really like. Games that feature melee combat and action, but I never really got into beat 'em up games like Final Fight or anything like that. So I've kind of really had a penchant for games like Dark Souls or Nier or any of these other types of hand-to-hand combat, sword moves, type of things like that. So I always kind of naturally drift to that. But and the second half of it is not an artist. I'm kind of beholden to the art assets I can get a hold of. And it can be really difficult to get art that is cohesive, like within the same looking style, that isn't all just fantasy creature X, fantasy creature Y. Sadly, the asset store is kind of limited on the uniqueness of things, right? Like if you type in skeleton or whatever, you're going to get like 50 different types of skeleton enemies. But if you type in, I don't know, even if you just go browsing through there, like a lot of the things are the cliched trope, fantasy Dungeons and Dragons, Elder Scrolls type of monsters that you see everywhere, like the bandits, the Sasquatch Yeti type monster, goblins, and it's kind of hard to get away from that in this kind of environment. Now, if I was going to hire an artist or do something like that, or really take up 3D modeling on my own, I might be able to get away from that. And personally, like, I'm good enough at 3D modeling to make some small changes to things and re-export and do things like that, but like making the textures from scratch and stuff like that is well beyond my skill level. And quite frankly, that's not my strength. It would take me a lot longer to do that myself than it would just to hire someone or hook up with an artist online or something and do that. It's just I'm not quite to that point yet. But like I kind of started with, it does make the theming kind of difficult because I don't mind the medieval type stuff, but I want to try to be more unique and creative with this. It's just a little hard given the artistry that I kind of have access to through the Unity asset store. No, I think here I'm starting to wire up the controller to fill in the lists for the skills and the equipped items. So kind of see the exact same rigmarole, which, I mean, kind of brings me back to my original point at the very beginning is, what do I do with videos that are, it's more of the same, right? As I'm just stitching these screens together. Do I stop recording? I mean, I guess I'm far enough ahead now in my recordings that I could take a solid week or two and just crack out the rest of these screens, and that's that. But at the same time, I don't want to lose the productivity gains that I get from doing the recording, and I also I don't want to lose the consistency, because I feel like that's one of these habits that you need to build up from scratch. And it's like, all right, well, if I get in the habit now and I record every single session, then I can feel all right with just throwing away a couple sessions if I don't feel like it was unique enough to put onto YouTube. Or B, maybe I just don't care and I just throw it all up there. I don't know yet. I do know I need to get better at syncing my audio, because I've been noticing with the videos I've been putting out, like my audio is always off by a second or two, and I'm still not sure exactly why. I think when I do my clap sync, I need a visual indicator on the screen to line that up with before I do the cut. Like, I feel like that's the trick, and we'll see how I do with this one, because, well, I mean, quite frankly, being post commentary, being off doesn't really matter too much. And secondarily, since I'm doing this at 2 times the speed on the video, it's it's not going to line up exactly anyways. But it's something I've been thinking about, and going forward, I've got another 5 or 6 videos to cut together and put up. Once the rest of I think as of now I'm scheduled up with videos pretty much every day. I think one week I do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday video set, because I had a part 1, 2, and 3, and then didn't want to jump into the next section when I didn't quite have enough videos for it. But yeah, I'm pretty much scheduled up through like January 28th or something like that. So yeah, sadly, any of you that are actually watching my videos, you're going to have to deal with the out-of-sync audio for at least a couple weeks. But I mean, then again, given the size of some of these videos I'm putting out, I wouldn't be surprised if people were already watching it at 2 times speed or 1.5 times. I mean, I think the longest one I put out was like an hour and 50 minutes. And it's like, I try to, I want to say I try to keep them short, because I'm obviously not trying very hard at it. But I do try to be cognizant of when I reach a good breaking point to cut the video. And that's the times I do kind of remember to do that. It's been around 40 minutes or so. But there are times where I'm just going, and it's like, all right, well, I'm going to keep going, and I'm not at a good spot to stop, because with my development style, I tend to jump around between tasks a lot. So, I end up with an hour and a half of video that's, labeled one thing, but then I also, skip around for 20 minutes to refactor some other bit of code, or to fix a bug I came across, or whatever the scenario is. So what am I doing here? That's right, yeah, so I'm, given that grid of stat objects, which I didn't talk about it at the time, but I'm setting myself up with prefabs for each of the list items in the equipment list and the stat list, but they're just copies of my prefab that has my, nicely formatted text. And I wanted to create that separate prefab so that if I do decide to do something different with the text, or replace it with a different prefab, I don't run the risk of affecting my original text prefab. So yeah, so I'm looking through the, I think this is the only stat that I don't call a calculate method from the player instance on, because the player instance calculates don't really know about the min and max. It's just getting the randomized amount of damage for this next attack. So that one is kind of out, but for the rest of them, I think it's, all the calculate critical attack percentage, calculate damage reduction, calculate block percentage. It's a combination of the equipment and the passive stats on the player. Or the passive skills, rather. And to date, I haven't quite figured out whether or not the player is actually going to have stats of their own to augment or increment. I'm still trying to work that out, because I think that the hallmark of a good RPG is allowing for variable playstyles, right? So I would like to have it so that the player can, choose whether they're going to focus on, what playstyle, what type of weapons, what type of stats and all that. But I might just keep this simpler. Like, I really don't know. I want to go more complicated with it, but because that's, as a person that loves building game systems, that's always kind of my favorite way to go. But I think that given the scope I'm already kind of going with this game, I'm kind of like, this is my first PC game that I'm going to go out with, and if I see any reasonable success on Steam, I'm going to, regardless of whether I see reasonable success on Steam, I'm going to look into what it takes to get on a PSN or Xbox Live. But I would kind of, I don't know, I keep going back and forth of, am I overcomplicating it or am I oversimplifying it? And honestly, if the game's going to be single player, then build variety is kind of a pointless endeavor. Because, I don't know. It just feels kind of lame and pointless if you're not going to be playing multiplayer or playing competitive. Because ultimately, if every character is the same, or every player's character is the same, like, it fills kind of an important role within the narrative of the game, right? Like, you need this leader character that is, capable of managing their resources, managing their skills, and doing whatever. But if you put them up, if you allow for the player to create a build in such a way that they then are not capable of completing the game, like they just completely flub it, like in a single player experience, that's garbage. Like, that's the absolute worst. And you can cheat and solve that with things like being able to re-roll the player's stats or something like that, but I think that's just kind of a failure of the game designer. If you have to re-roll the stats, then you haven't informed the player well enough of what's good and what isn't, and you've kind of allowed them to go down this path that they've wrecked their ability to complete the game. I don't know. It's a complicated topic. I haven't completely thought it through. So, consider that just my ramblings at the moment. Anyways, it looks like we finished the video while I was rambling on, so thank you for watching. I'll probably have more Fireside chats with Chris in the future. We'll see. Anyways, take care.